All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Iraqi authorities have begun counting votes a day after the nation held parliamentary elections for only the second time since the 2003 U.S. invasion. On Sunday, 38 people died and 80 were wounded in Election Day attacks. Despite the threat of violence, voter turnout was higher than expected. Analysts say it could take weeks, if not months, before a new government is formed because no political party is expected to win an outright majority. Some Sunni politicians boycotted the election after a Shiite-led panel barred around 500 candidates from running due to alleged links to Saddam Hussein's outlawed Ba'ath Party. President Obama praised Sunday's vote.
By any measure, this was an important milestone in Iraqi history. Dozens of parties and coalitions fielded thousands of parliamentary candidates, men and women. Ballots were cast at some 50,000 voting booths. And in a strong turnout, millions of Iraqis exercised their right to vote with enthusiasm and optimism. Today's voting makes it clear that the future of Iraq belongs to the people of Iraq.
A British soldier who refused to return for a second tour of duty in Afghanistan has been sentenced to 9 months in military prison. 27-year-old Lance Corporal Joe Glenton served 7 months in Afghanistan. After he returned, he began openly speaking out against the war.
I came back feeling quite ashamed. I felt I couldn't see what we'd achieved by being there. I felt very disillusioned. And I think that disillusionment isn't isolated to me. A lot of my colleagues who are serving now, and some of them are in Afghanistan and Iraq, are equally disillusioned. There is discontent in the ranks, which is a very scary thing for the services.
In news from Africa, the New York Times reports the U.S. is helping the Somali government prepare a major offensive to take the capital of Mogadishu from Islamist militants. Over the past 6 months, Somalia has farmed out young men to Djibouti, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and Sudan for military instruction. Most are now back in the capital waiting to fight. So far, most of the U.S. military assistance to the Somali government has been focused on training, but U.S. officials told the Times he expects U.S. covert forces will get involved in the offensive. The official said, quote, "What you're likely to see is airstrikes and special ops moving in, hitting, and getting out." In Nigeria, hundreds of people, including many women and children, have reportedly died in religious fighting in the city of Jos. Acting Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan has ordered security forces to hunt down those behind the attack. The city of Jos lies at the crossroads of Nigeria's Muslim north and predominantly Christian south. The BBC put the death toll at 500. Another 200 people died in Jos in January. Vice President Joe Biden's arriving in Israel today, one day after the Palestinians agreed to indirect talks with Israel for the first time since the Israeli assault on Gaza. Biden is the most senior U.S. official to visit Israel since President Obama took office in January 2009. Earlier today, Israel approved the construction of 112 new homes in a Jewish settlement in the occupied West Bank, despite a partial moratorium on such construction. The Israeli group Peace Now criticized the new project, saying it would, quote, "widen the gap with the Palestinians and the two-state solution, which risks becoming obsolete." The Palestinians have warned that further settlement growth threatened the peace process in future talks. U.S. Special Envoy George Mitchell praised the resumption of the talks.
We look forward to what we hope will be a credible, serious, constructive process that will accomplish the objective which we all share: comprehensive peace in the Middle East.
Meanwhile, a top Israeli military official has arrived in the United States, where he's expected to be met by a series of protests. Lieutenant General Gabi Ashkenazi, the chief of staff for the IDF, is attending a Friends of the IDF fundraiser at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in Manhattan on Tuesday. Groups planning to protest outside the fundraiser include Jews Say No, American Jews for a Just Peace, and Jewish Voices for Peace. The New York Times reports the federal government has given more than $107 billion to companies which are also doing business with Iran despite a ban on U.S. companies trading with Iran. An analysis of federal records and company reports reveals that 74 companies have done business with both the U.S. government and Iran since 2000. The list includes Halliburton, Shell, BP, Caterpillar, and ExxonMobil. Many of the companies skirted the law by setting up foreign subsidiaries. Voters in Iceland have rejected a plan to pay over $5 billion to Britain and the Netherlands to reimburse customers of a failed Icelandic internet bank. 93% of Icelandic voters oppose spending the money. The $5.3 billion owed represents more than 40% of Iceland's gross domestic product. Britain has warned Iceland that it risks becoming an international pariah if it does not pay the money back, and the IMF is delaying a bailout package for Iceland. But Icelandic voters overwhelmingly rejected the threats from the international community.
I think that what's happened is that people have said that they are not willing to accept being put into any sort of debt slavery. People want to have a fair and equitable result from this entire crisis.
Here in this country, the nation's official unemployment remained at 9.7% last month as 36,000 more jobs were eliminated. The latest jobs report shows that 4% of the population has been without work for 27 weeks or more. The unemployment rate for African-American workers remains at 15.8%. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid attempted to put a positive spin on the jobs figures.
Today is a big day in America. Only 36,000 people lost their jobs today, which is really good.
Harry Reid defended his comments, pointing out that some analysts had predicted more than 36,000 jobs would be lost in February. In news from Capitol Hill, Democratic Congressmember Eric Massa of New York has announced he'll resign today amidst allegations he sexually harassed a male staffer. Massa was elected to the House in 2008. Meanwhile, 7-term Democratic Congressmember William Delahunt of Massachusetts has announced he will not seek re-election. More details have emerged about John Patrick Bedell, the 36-year-old California man who opened fire last week outside the Pentagon. Bedell wounded 2 police officers before being shot to death. Bedell's father said Patrick showed symptoms of a mental disorder approaching paranoid schizophrenia. In an audio recording archived online, Bedell rails against government encroachment on private property and the monetary system.
When the government can control how private property is used, and especially when the government controls the monetary system that is used to exchange private property, the government has the mechanisms and the motivation to control individuals to the smallest detail. To prevent themselves from being enslaved, the powerful masters of our existing governments use every means at their disposal, including bribery, theft, and murder, to control those governments, which are imperfect institutions operated by imperfect individuals.
A judge in Texas has ruled the death penalty to be unconstitutional because it can be assumed that innocent people have been executed. State District Judge Kevin Fine's ruling has set off a firestorm in Texas, which has executed far more prisoners than any other state since 1976. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott called Fine's ruling one of unabashed judicial activism. The Council on American Islamic Relations has filed a misconduct complaint against police officers in the Nevada city of Henderson, detained 7 Muslim men for praying in public. The men had stopped at a shopping center at sunset to pray in the parking lot. One of the men used a cell phone to videotape the police officer explaining why they were being detained.
You knowing that we're just Muslims here praying, but I know that. Well, we are praying, you know there's a Muslim prayer. Is that enough for you to say that this is suspicious activity?
Well, that's why I'm checking it out.
Do you think it is?
Do I think it is? I think there's somebody out there called us and said, hey, check this out. Did I see you guys praying? No. Do I know what you were saying? I mean, I don't know if you guys repeat the same thing or if you're actually over there going, I hope that I can kill a police officer today. I don't know that you're not saying that.
The Daily Californian newspaper reports some student protesters remain in jail after being arrested Thursday during the National Day of Action to defend public education. About 140 protesters were arrested in Oakland for blocking traffic on interstate highways